Bam. How are you? How are you doing tonight? I am going to check my settings because I don't know how this is going. I can see me, but I don't know if you can hear me. I think you can. I could say type F in the chat, but I don't have anybody chatting with me right now. My stream's still new, and there's not a whole lot of people that know who I am or what I'm doing. So let's get that out of the way now. My name is John Schenk. I am the founder and managing broker of a company called Deerwood Realty, a real estate company here in St. Louis, Missouri. In the morning, I stream about real estate stuff, and in the evenings, I stream about employment stuff. Why? Well, I've always been fascinated by it. Always been fascinated by my path in the world and how it deviated from what was the path that you were supposed to take to get that Fortune 500 job, get the golden parachute, and then move on. And as I've lived my life, it's been fascinating to watch how the world has changed, how the employment arena has become toxic. Probably already always was, but I mean, now it's just ridiculous. We have companies openly advocating for political positions that most of their customers don't share, and they are in these multinational corporations are just tied in lockstep with the government. The government says you do this, or else we'll get rid of that contract. The government says you do this, or we'll have some people discuss an alternative for you with business. Maybe we'll find a story about one of your CEOs that you won't like. Maybe we'll find something about your employees that we'll go ahead and pass on from the FBI to the press. Really, really great stuff. Really things that people should be proud of when talking about the workplace. So that's why I started this stream. Now, is it popular? Well, I wouldn't say it's very popular. I think tonight I'll probably be the only person here. And that's okay. Hopefully over time we can build it into something that someone would actually want to watch. Because I think that the discussion needs to be had. I think too much discussion is being done like in an HR environment in an organization and not outside of the organization. I mean, why are companies wanting to unionize? I mean, Starbucks was always the company that everyone wanted to model their selves after, as far as they gave away healthcare and it was supposed to be good to work there. Well, why are they unionizing then? What's going on? If it's so great, why is that? Amazon, if you tell your mother or your father that you work for Amazon, they're proud of you. Well, what happens when you're a driver and you're forced to pee into a bottle? You know, I mean, like, what's going on? So those are the kinds of things we talk about on our nature of employment. I've got a Twitter. Our employment is the Twitter handle. You can certainly hit me up there. But yeah, we just go over stories that I thought are fascinating by employment. I mean, you know, you're an individual, you're a human being. And when you get put into a terrible situation, a terrible organization doing terrible things to their people and to the world around them, that's an issue. That's a problem. Similarly, I mean, every country has employment, okay? Every country you go, there's laws, there's laws about employment. What is it what is it that brings these companies together, these world laws together? What is that about? Is it an exploiting of the workforce globally? It's a fascinating issue, and I just hope to look into it over time. I don't have any like set beliefs as far as how companies should act. That's all stuff that I kind of want to develop as we go. So we'll do that. That's what we'll do. I think I'd like to head into the first article. So we will do that. So sorry about that. But before we go, I did want to say, you know, how are you? How's it going? How are things? It's Friday night. You're going out to party, right? You know, or are you stuck with me? I'm fine with that. Hey, let's go over this stuff and see how it works. So here's the first article. I thought it was kind of fascinating because it says, It's an old type of lawsuit. It says veteran Wells Fargo manager suit alleges boys club conditions. Okay, so what does that mean, right? It says in Los Angeles, it says a female veteran Wells Fargo employee is suing the bank, alleging the institution has wrongly passed her over for promotions in favor of men while paying her less money because she is a woman working in a boys club. Now, this is allegations, okay? We don't know if it's true or not, but let's just keep going with the allegations because they need to be sensational for the court to pick up on it. So it says Vanessa Carney's Los Angeles Superior Court lawsuit alleges gender discrimination, failure to pay equal wages, retaliation, and failure to prevent discrimination and harassment. Carney seeks unspecified compensatory and punitive damages in the suit brought Thursday. It says a Wells Fargo representative could not be immediately reached for comment. Ms. Carney has been the victim of the male-dominated boys club culture permeating Wells Fargo and has experienced firsthand discrimination on the basis of her gender and denying her benefits that were readily provided to her male counterparts, the suit alleges. Okay, it says, well, Wells Fargo publicly boasts about its commitment to diversity and inclusion. Its public pronouncements are nothing more than window dressing and hollow gestures, according to the suit. The bank pays female employees far less than their male counterparts and provides fewer job opportunities and growth for equally or better qualified women, the suit states. Now, the part that I liked in this article, I did catch some of it before we were on, and the part that I enjoyed is Wells Fargo publicly boasts about its commitment to diversity and inclusion. Its public pronouncements are nothing more than window dressing and hollow gestures. Do you know how many corporations could be accused of the exact same thing? Do you think all these corporations are like, hey, this is a great thing, we're going to jump on over it. This is going to be a great thing. We really, really do support this. Do you think, and then you say, well, John, they put money towards these things. Oh no, they do. And it's hush money. Please pay us this money so that we don't have to, we don't have to be, protested against or anything else. It's shut up money, basically, hush money. Now I thought this was interesting because it just seems like, I don't know. Let's keep going. It says, despite receiving consistent positive work reviews, Carney's pay has not increased since 2010, and she has been denied promotions and advancements provided to her male peers, many of whom had less experience, fewer qualifications, and not even a fraction of her demonstrated commitment to the bank through extracurricular committee work. So the argument here is the plaintiff is in the community or something, or demonstrated commitment to the bank through extracurricular committee work. So maybe she's on some sort of committee. Maybe that makes her, because she does it, that gives her some sort of license to get more than others. That's my understanding. I don't know if it's true. It says for the first 7 years, while she worked at El Segundo office from 2005 to 2013, Carney was the only female employee, the suit states. Up until 6 months ago, Carney, who has an MBA and about 22 years experience in financial services, was the only woman out of 11 directors in asset-backed finance sales, according to the suit. Wells Fargo's senior executives routinely called female employees complainers, lame, and bad traders. And they often referred to the plaintiff as a young woman and would implore her to find her voice, the suit states. Senior male executives routinely went to strip clubs with both colleagues and clients, using the time to bond with other males while excluding women from important gatherings. It's just bizarre. By the way, I own my own company, Deerwood Realty. If you think we're meeting in a strip club for me to sell you a house, I mean, seriously, that's not professional. It's not professional. I don't care what anybody says. It's not professional. It's not necessary. A lot of this business stuff is not necessary. If you want to conduct business with someone, you can try to flatter them with strip clubs and buy them golf memberships and everything else. It's not necessary to getting business done. It's an excess. Senior males Wells Fargo executives have a penchant for making homophobic, anti-Semitic, and racist comments, the suit further alleges. I don't understand why we're doing this in 2022. I mean, I just don't get it. It says Carney was forced to accept a demotion in January to obtain a needed location transfer of the type routinely granted to men, the suit alleges. Her current duties include selling certificates of deposit, agency discount notes, and treasury bills, the suit states. It says forced to accept a demotion in January to obtain a needed location transfer of the type routinely granted to men. So she wanted to move locations, and so to do that, she had to take a demotion. But a man, if he wanted to go somewhere else, wouldn't be demoted. That's the allegation there. Wells Fargo's hastily created role for Carney will give her markedly diminished visibility within the bank and in the financial services industry, and will further stymie and impact deleteriously a career trajectory that has already been exceedingly hamstrung over the last decade on the basis of gender, the suit states. So, like, I'm trying to understand this, like, as best I can. This employee is a woman, okay? And she has worked somewhere since 2005 to 2021. And somehow she wanted to move to a different office. And to do so, she was given a demotion so she could move the location. And that was the moment when she decided to sue. She'd had enough. Now, what's fascinating to me, like, let's, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but let's look at this. Now, if someone, like, let's say you work for a large organization like Wells Fargo, and your manager says racist, sexist, homophobic remarks, okay, all the time. And then he goes and gets a different job somewhere else. And then you bring a lawsuit 10 years later. And in that lawsuit, you allude to this former employee. And you paint the entire corporation with this brush of, bad behavior. Is that like reasonable? I mean, I just don't know. But the way it sounds, this person has a history of working for this organization for many, many years. And there are perceived slights based on the allegations. Now, we don't know, but she certainly seems to feel this way. And I just wonder how many of those employees are still there that she has complaints about. And then the other question to me is she had these complaints. She had these issues. Now, look, I'm not comfortable with organizations self-investigating themselves by any stretch of the imagination. But, oh, I didn't even send it over there. I didn't even share my screen. You didn't even see any of it. I'm sorry. What am I going to do? I'm not going to go back. Anyway, here, watch now. Sorry. I apologize. I was on a roll. Actually, I got distracted by something, and it is what it is. Okay. Now you should be good. So, like I was saying, if it's somebody that's no longer there, does that count? Also, like, should you we're just talking here between you and me and the internet. Should the woman who is making these allegations, should she have formally filed complaints within the organization during her time of employment, since she was routinely seeing these types of behaviors? I'm just asking. I don't know the answer. Anyway, I want you to see the top of the article, so you know it exists. Now, the link to the article is in the description. Okay. I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting one partially because the allegations are like from when I was in college the first time. Like, that's how old they are. It's just like, it's bad. So, next article. Here's one in Bloomberg Opinion. It says, if you already hate your job, it's fine to quit. That's a very interesting statement. Let me go forth with another one that I thought's always been interesting in my own industry. So in real estate, people say that the bank extracts a 30-year mortgage from you. It's a financial instrument. It's a contract. And if you don't like the terms of the contract, you're free to walk away. You don't owe the bank anything. They're trying to profit off of you. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, but that's what I read and that's what I see. So I just wondered what you thought about that. Now, let's keep going. It says, so this is a commentary. This is an opinion. So let's see if we agree with the opinion, eh? It says, when Devin Toom was 24, she began a new role as an editor at a teen magazine. I knew by my second day that I'd made the wrong decision, she said. Behind closed doors, the editor-in-chief didn't match the warm, friendly persona she displayed in public. It got so bad that our executive editor tried to console me one day by saying this EIC, editor-in-chief, was just hazing me. I had a similar experience at 23 when I took a job that promised international travel, but in reality, mostly involved trips to Ohio. And it turns out this phenomenon is more common than many people realize. According to a new survey of more than 2,500 respondents from career site The Muse, which I founded, well, that was coincidental, eh? 72% of workers said they too have experienced starting a new job and realizing, to their surprise or regret, that the position or company was very different from what they were led to believe. 72% were sold a bill of goods. I believe that. 30% said both the position and the company were very different. I called this unpleasant surprise shift shock to distinguish it from an ordinary new job jitters. It's normal to feel nervous starting a new job, but it can be a big problem to be hired into a role with one set of responsibilities and then be expected to perform another, or to join a company culture that turns out to be cliquey when you were sold on the idea of camaraderie. So, one of the things I think is dicey here is, like, let's just say you're being recruited by someone. Do you think that the recruiter is going to say anything negative about the company they're trying to recruit you to? Like, don't you have to have some sort of filter on your own that says, hey, I'm being recruited for a reason? Number one, you're being recruited because they can't hire anyone on their own. I mean, that's an issue. So maybe, just maybe, you'd say, oh, well, why aren't they telling me all the bad things about this company? Well, if it's too good to be true, I mean, come on, you have to think a little bit more. It says, over the last 2 years, as job candidates and employers have assessed each other over Zoom, I suspect a lot of people have ended up with that, did I just make a huge mistake feeling? And while Devin, who's now director of editorial and brand at The Muse, waited a year to leave her not as advertised position at the teen magazine, largely due to an old-fashioned unspoken rule, that's how long you should give a new job. 41% of our survey respondents said they'd give a new job only 2 to 6 months before quitting, and 80% agreed that it's acceptable to leave a new job before 6 months if it doesn't live up to your expectations. Now, here's the issue. If you're going to leave your job within the first month or two, you'd better have some way to bridge that gap on your resume, or else you're going to look like a job hopper, and no one wants to deal with that. So that's why they're talking about this, largely due to an old-fashioned unspoken rule that you should stay at a job for at least a year, even if you don't like it. I don't believe that. If you hate a job, just move on down the road. Life is too short, and it's your life. You're not the company's life. They don't care about you at all. They might say they do, but come on, let's be honest. This is a generational shift driven by Generation Z and millennial candidates who are more likely to believe the employer-employee relationship should be a two-way street. For many, the pandemic has only emphasized that life is short. Like I just said, I'm literally a Generation Z and millennial candidate at this point, which is wild because I've always thought that way. It says life is short, making people less likely to stick around in unfulfilling jobs. While that may sound flighty to some older workers, younger employees are probably right to leave. When they do stay, employees who experience shift shock are less likely to be engaged or to become high performers per the Society of Human Resource Management. That can limit career growth. Well, let's be honest. It depends on the industry, and it depends on the type of job that you've applied for, and it depends on, a lot of things. I mean, if you're working at Starbucks as a barista, okay, where are you going? A manager? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just the way it is. If you're working on the factory floor, what are you going to do? Get to be a supervisor? I mean, where is your moving up? Okay. That's one of the things I think that has been so sneaky and so bad about employment in the United States is there's no ability once you have a job to move up. And that's ridiculous. If there's no job advancement, if there's no opportunity for advancement at all, I mean, come on. Why are you working that job? Why are you putting in your dues to never, ever benefit from it? It just doesn't make any sense to me. On the other hand, quitting can be expensive for both the company and the employee. An article in the Harvard Business Review estimated that employers spend an average of $4,129 per hire in the U.S. For new hires, losing health benefits alone can be costly, as the average cost of health insurance in the U.S. is $541 per month, which is ridiculous. That's the average. An employee who quits might also have to dip into savings, as it usually takes at least 2 months to go through a new job hunt and interview process. That depends on the market, totally market-based. Right now, I suspect it's not going to take you 2 months, but who knows? Before deciding to quit, employees who find themselves in a surprisingly bad situation should talk with their managers. That's what they say. Bryn Penny Burkhart, a coach and career management expert, suggests they keep a work diary for 2 to 4 weeks, allowing them to discuss patterns with their hiring manager. Tee up the conversation in a positive manner so it doesn't sound like complaining. Take emotion out of it and come with logic and facts. She recommends a question statement framework to keep it congenial. Example, I'm finding it a challenge to stick to the working hours that were agreed upon when I accepted the offer. Some important weekly matters are scheduled outside of those hours. Can we work together to address this? I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that as an employee. And if I'm the employer and somebody comes to me and talks to me that way, I just let them go. I don't need this idea of business speak and all this stuff. No, don't need it. Don't need it. Don't want it. Don't want to have anything to do with it. I mean, seriously. Now you could come at me and say, hey man, like I'm working these extra hours. I'm not getting compensated for it. What's up with that? Like, what are we doing here? That's nice, clear, clean communication. I don't have to guess what we're talking about. As an employee, this is probably why I don't have a 9 to 5, right? Some people would do this and think it's a great idea. At the same time, begin the search for a new job. If you truly liked your old one and regret leaving, consider asking your former boss about returning to the company. Many companies are thrilled to welcome former employees back. It depends on the type of employee you are. Are you a great employee? Then you should go back. I have no problem with that thought, you know. But if you went and you burned all your bridges and you weren't a very good employee in the first place and you left, and you told everybody to kiss off on your way out, then expect to have a little trouble getting your job back. But think about it from an employer's perspective, it's going to cost me money to go find someone. It's going to cost me money to train that person. And they may never be good at the job. I might have to keep doing it. It might be an endless cycle. Whereas if I hired you back, now I know what I'm getting. Saving as much money as possible will make it easier to move on if a few months go by and nothing has improved. When it's time to quit, Eloise Ionit, a coach and expert in communication and leadership skills, says, make it about yourself when you tell your manager you're leaving. Let them know that you were really excited about joining the team, but that you now realize that you will not be successful in the position. Keep your reasoning professional and high level. I can contribute meaningfully when I have more responsibility and autonomy in decision making. I know this about myself and need to find a role that better aligns with how I thrive. Again, you could say that to me and I'd be like, what are we talking about here? Are you leaving? Like, okay. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to talk this way. It's just weird. If you feel the relationship warrants it and feedback would be appreciated, this can also be an appropriate time to share some of the gaps between the expectations that were set during the interview process and the reality of the position. Given how common shift shock is, it may not always be preventable. But when talking with current and former employees and asking questions designed to elicit candor, what's your favorite and least favorite thing about working here, reduce the odds of it happening again. Your sense of fulfillment on work depends on it. I don't know. So like when you're being recruited, it feels good. It feels like people really want you. They understand you and they want you to be a part of their organization. And then when you get to the organization, it's not anything like you thought it would be. It's depressing and it's kind of a shit show. So then what do? Well, then you leave. But you look for a job first. If you're unemployed, it's harder to get back in that cycle than it is if you're not unemployed. So go with that route. Go find a job where they pay you good money, or they say they're going to, and leave the job that you don't like. I would never quit without having another job lined up. That's me personally. But you know what do I know? It's not like I'm the greatest employee ever. No one's knocking down my door to hire me. So I mean, take that for what you want. I'm sorry. I saw this article and it's such clickbait and I had to do it. It says, if you say one of these 11 phrases at work, prepare to be sued. They may show indifference to employment issues. They may also indicate you're willing to ignore the law. I just think it's an interesting question. I think it's an interesting topic. What can I say that's going to get me sued? Now, and in what position? As the employer? As the employee? What are we doing here? And my favorite streamer is Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law. And when I watch him stream, sometimes he's quiet. He doesn't say a word. He just kind of looks at the camera like this. And then other times he checks the chat and reads off a few of them in between segments. I'm trying to read off my chat, but no one's in my chat. So it's making it kind of difficult. I'm sure you'll understand. I want to check something real quick before we get started on this next story. We're going. Okay, good. Good. Better. Gotta get a. Oh. Okay. So, chat, what are the things, like, I'm asking you to interact with me in the chat. There's no one there, but chat, what do you think? What are the 11 phrases at work that you should be prepared to be sued if you say them? All the ones I can think of are like 4-letter words or suggestions to someone. Let's see. One of the purposes of good human resources is to prevent lawsuits. That's correct. They call that risk management. But your HR person and your employment attorney don't follow you around all the time. So business attorney Josh Joel, counsel at Stanton Law, put together a list of phrases that often come out of managers' mouths. When you start thinking this way, you're getting ready to be sued. I'll just 1099 this employee. He's salaried. I don't need to worry about overtime. Non-competes are not enforceable right. I'll handle this EEOC charge on my own. This complaint is stupid. I'm not even going to respond to it. Aren't you proud that we have an all-female or other protected characteristic team? I've seen that one in government before. I've seen people tweet like, hey, we've got all women now. Yay. And it's like, I'll just find an employment contract online. I'm going to dock your pay if you. I'm a nice guy. I don't want to have that conversation. Just tell them they are performing fine. The employee is a problem. Let's move them to a different role. Interesting. I don't understand this. No offense. Okay. I'll just 1099 this employee. The IRS and Department of Labor both have strict requirements that determine if a person is an employee or a 1099 contractor. You don't get to choose. And people who receive 1099s are never employees. Prepare yourself for a hit from the Department of Labor or the IRS. So I work in a business where real estate agents are 1099. Like, that's totally normal. It's like, that's what we do. So, I mean, what do you know, that's the business that I'm in. So, but I also don't call I would not call an agent that worked with me an employee. They would be a colleague. They would be a real estate agent. They wouldn't be an employee because you're not employed by, You're not an employee. You're 1099. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, we learn about it, when we start in the business, and that's it. So let's continue down the road. It says, he's salaried. I don't need to worry about overtime. Salaried doesn't mean exempt. Exempt employees must meet certain duties before you don't have to pay them overtime. Double check with HR or your employment attorney to ensure that you pay your employees correctly. I think that as an organization, that is on you. It's your job to know the employment rules in your municipality, or at least be able to go somewhere and ask. Non-competes are not enforceable, right? While many non-competes aren't worth the paper they're written on, don't assume this is the case. Have your employment attorney double check. States have very different laws around these. Don't assume, and have your new employee's former company come after you. Now, we talked about this yesterday. I think that a non-compete or a non-disclosure clause is getting out of hand, especially for positions and jobs which I don't think accurately share trade secrets. For instance, last night we talked about anesthesiologists. Are you going to tell me that a classically trained anesthesiologist is going to go to one organization and they're going to learn something so far outside of the norm of what they were taught in school or through their experiences that it would actually damage the business if they left and showed that product or that service to someone else? It's really hard for me to think that that's the case. Really. So these non-compete, these non-disclosures, I think that I mean, just from where I'm coming from, at least in the situations that I'm explaining, I think that there's room there for organizations to be sued, and they will at some point in time kind of stop with this. It's my thought. They'll keep trying, but okay. It says, I'll handle this EEOC charge on my own. Equal opportunity. I don't even know what that is. You might as well say, I'd like to lose this case. EEOC cases are tricky, and you can get yourself in a lot more trouble by not hiring an attorney. Contact an employment attorney as soon as you receive notification that the EEOC is involved. Well, that seems like a good idea. If you're being sued, or if someone's opening an investigation into your organization, I suspect you should talk to an employment attorney. Probably a good one. Probably be a good idea. This complaint is stupid. I'm not even going to respond to it. It may be stupid. The complainant may be a whiner and a liar. It doesn't matter. Please don't ignore it. Investigate it and consult with a counsel. I agree with that. Aren't you proud that we have an all-female or any other protected characteristic team? The law requires that you do not discriminate on the basis of sex, not that you can discriminate against men but not women. This is basically announcing that you engage in illegal discrimination. Yes, it is. And how this hasn't snared more companies, I don't know. When you say that we're committed to all these diversity and all this stuff, we're going to hire X person because of their racial or sexual characteristics, man, that is against the law. At least the law that I knew when I was growing up. Might be different now, but I mean, when you openly, it's one thing to practice it on the down low, which is wrong. Don't get me wrong. It's quite another to be blatant and just talk about it out in public and do it. That's gutsy and not smart, in my opinion. I mean, that's just me. Okay, let's continue. Sorry, I had a little, I don't know, I was thinking. I'll just find an employment contract online. While this sounds cheaper than a lawyer, you know it's expensive when you get sued or run into another problem because that online contract didn't reflect your actual needs. State laws are critical for employment law, and something you find online may not meet your state requirements. Plus, are you sure it's up to date? Spend money to hire an attorney. Plus, it's not that expensive to get a professional contract. This makes me laugh because have you ever called an attorney and said, hey, I need this document? And they're like, sure thing. And they go and they own a subscription or something to some sort of legal document processing company. So you get this I need a contract. So you get a boilerplate contract for Missouri. Like I'm living in Missouri and I do business in Missouri. And you're like, dude, and then he's like, that'll be like $1,000. And you're like, you literally just copied and pasted this. This isn't new. It's bad. It's bad. I hate that. All right. I'm going to dock your pay if you blank. There are only a few cases where you can dock pay. Unless your employment attorney already approves a specific thing, you'd likely be breaking the law if you dock pay. But let's talk about this. Do you remember yesterday? There was the story of the employee who was working and needed a lunch break or wanted a lunch break or something like that. And so he went to his boss. He said, hey, man, I haven't had lunch. I'm running a little bit late. I think he had to do something. He had some errand that was pressing or something. And he's like, and the employer flat out said, I'm going to cut a half hour off of your pay if you go. And so the guy's like, or so the employee's like, all right, well, fine. I'm going to go. And then he never came back. He never came back because he quit the job right then and there. Now, could that employer have been sued when he said he was going to dock the employee's pay for taking a lunch break, which we also learned yesterday. There's no federal mandate that someone have a lunch break or the other two short breaks that are traditional. I mean, pretty common around here if you're an hourly, but whatever. What do I know? I'm a nice guy. I don't want to have that conversation. Do you know why managers make more money? Because they have to have these tough conversations. Whatever conversation you avoid now will get worse. If an employee has a problem, address it immediately rather than letting it fester. So let's talk about that. Let's say your job is you make bricks. You manufacture bricks. And somebody comes to you and says, hey, so-and-so feels that they've been sexually harassed at work and they're filing a complaint. Okay. What do you want to do about it? Well, you could say, well, I'm a nice guy and I don't want to have that conversation. But I don't think that really solves the problem because someone's suing you. Okay. Now, when it says if an employee has a problem, address it immediately rather than let it fester. So I don't know. Are you supposed to conduct, again, an investigation that's not got subpoena power and it's not really a judicial action? I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with that. And as far as if somebody said something to me, I would have to be very careful during work hours because I'm concentrating on trying to get things done, like produce things. I don't really want to be thinking a whole lot about stuff. I want to just be knocking it out, getting it done. So maybe that's just me. Then the next one is just tell them they were performing fine. This goes along with the above problem. If you have a poor performing employee and you tell the employee they're performing fine, something crazy happens. They believe you. And when you give them a meets expectations performance appraisal, you've documented that. And then when you can't take their poor performance any longer and want to terminate, your employee won't believe it's for a performance reason. If they claim discrimination, how will you prove it wasn't? After all, their performance was fine according to your documentation. So let's talk about this. I think in the first article, the woman had 13 years of, positive job reviews. And I've often seen this is when you see a lawsuit, so the person that's filing the lawsuit says, the organization said I worked wonderfully. I was wonderful, can't miss prospect and things of that nature. Now that could have just been no offense, that could have just been a bad manager. Some managers don't like confrontation. Some managers don't, they don't feel it's their job to enforce some sort of rules at the job. And so they'll just say anything to avoid that conflict at a manager's meeting. And I don't think it's wrong or right type stuff. It's just what happens. It exists. So I don't know. Think about it. If you're a manager, okay, and let's say somebody's late 4 days out of the week, okay, and this goes on for 2 years, and every week you say, hey man, can you just show up on time once just to see what it's like for all of us? Okay. And then, then they take offense to that. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm a great employee. Everything's fine. Look at all these times when you said I was a great employee over the last 2 years. Now you're stuck. It's such a weird deal because, employee feedback is important. It's reasonable to want to have feedback. So I don't know. I just thought that was very interesting. Moving on, it says, this employee is a problem. Let's move them to a different role. Moving a problem employee from one department to the next doesn't solve the performance issues. This is different than finding a job the employee is more suited for. If I'm doing accounting work, I'll be a failure, but moving into HR and I'll be running the place in a week. But if your employee has a bad attitude, bullies, ignores regulations, or any other major problem, moving them won't solve the problem and likely will cause more. So if you find yourself saying any of the above phrases, it's time for a gut check and call to HR or your employment attorney. Don't let these problems go on and know your own limits. But what I wanted to go to is this employee is a problem. Let's move them to a different role. I think that the Catholic Church, when they moved people around, were doing this. They were guilty of doing this. And like, let's say a priest there were allegations that a priest was a little too friendly. Moving the priest to a different parish seemed like it solved the problem in the short term. But if the person really was a little bit off, now you're spreading that bad behavior elsewhere, and not great. Let me just say, not a great situation. Anyway, I'm going to go here because I'm kind of, oh no, that's too small. That's not the one I wanted. Is it this one? Yeah, that's pretty good. Can you read that still? I don't know. All right, I'll do it this way because you're saying that you want it that way. Actually, no one is. I'm just making it up. Let's continue with the next article. This is also a hot button issue. Workers at REI and Starbucks are doing the impossible and gaining traction for unions. Here's what they're hoping to solve. And what are you trying to do? It says, while union membership in the U.S. is a new historic low for all private sector's employees, it's even lower in retail and food service, according to 2021 Bureau of Labor Statistics data, with membership standing at 4.3 and 1.2 respectively. But those are the industries where the newest wave of union activity has found a foothold. This week, the number of unionized Starbucks locations in the U.S. doubled when 3 stores in Buffalo counted their balance on Wednesday. Last week, workers at REI store in Manhattan voted to join the retail, wholesale, and department store union with an 86% majority, becoming one of the first of the company's 174 locations to unionize. I'm proud to be here in the moment where my coworkers at REI Soho as part of this new wave of unionization efforts that is sweeping the nation, worker and organizer Claire Chang said in a statement shared with Fortune. A few dozen stores with a few dozen workers each night might seem like a drop in the bucket in terms of labor organizing, admits Ariel Avgar, a professor at Cornell's Industrial and Labor Relations School. But the symbolic meaning, the press, and the visibility that it gives the unionization as a legitimate effort to improve working conditions is huge. This is a very different kind of labor climate than we've seen in a very long time. I believe that. 100%. I don't know what it means. I don't know the exact definition, but I do believe that it's important. My future right now is REI, so I feel the need to make this a sustainable place for me to work, said a technical specialist at REI. The win didn't come without steady pushback. REI published a website that outlines why it believes unionization is unnecessary, arguing that the introduction of a union would inhibit the company's ability to communicate directly with its workers. It's a point that Starbucks also made in its own campaign against unions organizing at its stores, which has now spread to over 120 locations in 26 states. REI firmly believes that the decision of whether or not to be represented by unions is an important one, and we respect each employee's right to choose to or refuse union representation, reads a company statement provided to Fortune in response to the election at the Soho store. But against the backdrop of the pandemic's essential, non-essential discourse, union organizers are making a strong case for why workers need them now more than ever. Since March of 2020, Retail and food service workers have seen little improvement in their working conditions, while the companies they work for continue to enjoy record-breaking profits. Now, I don't know that that's true. Gosh, a mom and pop restaurant, okay, that just started during the pandemic is already a leg down. And I've noticed that, you don't see these national labor agitators, for lack of a better word. You don't see them picketing the local restaurant. It's usually always got a national bent to it. Adding to the mix, competitive labor market and workers that might be more sympathetic to pro-union arguments than they have in the decades past. The legacy of Occupy Wall Street and more recent movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter have also helped make social justice a normalized part of workplace conversations. It may be with some people. It's not with me. My job is to earn a profit. My job is to increase value to the shareholders. Offending half of my possible audience for a position that I don't hold, or that I hold and they don't, is not where I need to be, ever. And if the government says, hey, you need to help us with this, or we'll do X, Y, and Z, that needs to be recorded. That needs to be played in public so that everyone knows how corrupt the government really is. Unions are well positioned to argue for bread and butter issues like wages and benefits, but also broader questions of fairness and justice and equity in the workplace, says Avgar. The successful campaigns at Starbucks and REI have done both at once, with organizers linking day-to-day concerns with the fight for more abstract values. This isn't fighting the company, Avgar argues. It's wanting to make the company better. It's a philosophy that works well at small workplaces like an individual Starbucks and REI store, because it allows very intimate interactions between the union organizers and the employees who are unionizing. I don't know about that. These close relationships are especially important when working with young workers who are unfamiliar with organizing. Graham Gale, 24, remembers the first meeting of the REI Soho employees in October 2020 in Washington Square Park. One colleague asked the group, do any of you have experience with unions? Not really, was the unanimous reply. The group started a Discord channel and began to regularly talk about unionizing and how to move the campaign forward. I'm going to check my Discord server because I sent I sent a picture, and I don't know if they liked it or not, but I was happy to do it. Yes. I never get anybody to like it. Anyway, I tried. Let's keep going. Raising the standard across the board. Paige Smith, a 28-year-old barista and organizer at a Starbucks location in Atlanta, sees the excitement around the successful effort to turn Georgia blue during the 2020 presidential election persisting in her store's unionization campaign, where the far-off goals are just as ambitious. She sees unionization as a path to raising the bar for working conditions across food service, since Starbucks wages and benefits are already considered better than the standard. And for my life, during my time, it was always that. Look, Starbucks pays its employees better. You're not going to see unionization there. You might see it at McDonald's, but it's not going to be at Starbucks. Whether the Wendy's next door to us unionizes after we do or not, they're going to have to make their wages more competitive and their benefits more competitive if they want to attract people over a unionized Starbucks, she says. Kai Fireside, a 31-year-old barista who works for a Starbucks in Eugene, Oregon, has a similar outlook. We have this feeling that if we can turn Starbucks into a unionized retail food service setting, that can change all of retail, all of food service for the better. If we can get Starbucks to do it, we can get anybody to do it. All 8 Starbucks locations in Eugene have filed petitions for elections. Or the company loses money and goes out of business. And so some would say, well, that's okay. That's okay. If they can't afford to pay their workers, they should go out of business. Okay. Unions traditionally have advocated for workers in an effort to improve wages and benefits over lifelong careers with their companies. At Starbucks and REI, workers still see the merits of unionization, even if they don't plan to stay for long. This is not my permanent career, although that is the case for some people, says Fireside, who's planning to attend graduate school for archaeology and museum studies, but I still know that it could be better, and I want this to be a better experience for everybody that comes after me. For Gail, unionization is just as much about the ideal of having a stronger voice in the company as it is about those day-to-day improvements in the workplace. They remember worrying about paying rent. Oh, man. Oh. I lost my spring. I'm taking apart my pen, and I forgot a spot. Anyway, it rolled away. Oh, come here. They remember worrying about paying rent when their hours were unexpectedly cut in January 2020, and then the enduring stress of filing for unemployment while on furlough for the first 4 months of the pandemic. 2 years into the pandemic, Gail is looking for greater sense of stability and community. You're going to blame Starbucks or REI for their response during the coronavirus, their initial response. I don't have a super hopeful view of the future, says Gail, which they attribute to the omnipresent threat of climate change and the perpetual grind of capitalism. My future right now is REI, so I feel the need to make this a sustainable place for me to work. Well, whatever. I don't know. At least there's this discussion as to, are they doing the impossible? No, nothing's impossible. Here's what they're hoping to solve. What happens when they don't solve it? Are we going to get glowing articles about how great they are then? And I'm not being like, look, more power to them if it works out the way they think it will. I just know from experience that, we think about things going one way and they don't necessarily always go in that direction. All right, let's continue. This was an interesting article. I don't know if we'll call it this one or if we'll go more. Just depends. I want to highlight this article for a specific reason. Video shows man stabbing 2 workers at New York's Museum of Modern Art, or MoMA, as we're going to call it. Now, first off, I believe that when you're working at an organization and you are attacked, you are killed, you are maimed, 2 things. One, did the employer create a safe environment for you to work, number one? And number 2, shouldn't we have some level of disgust for those who would attack people trying to make a living for themselves? Like, shouldn't that be a higher bar of disgust? Like, if you attack a working person, that to me is worse than just attacking someone on the street. You're like intentionally going to this person's employment and hurting them. So here we go. The video video of the Museum of Modern Art shows the moment a man leaped over a reception desk and stabbed 2 employees as they tried to flee Saturday. I saw this as chilling video. The video released by the New York City Police shows a man identified as 60-year-old Gary Cabana entering the museum lobby through a revolving door, then climbing onto the desk and jumping over it as a man carrying what appears to be a walkie-talkie tries in vain to stop him. Well, hopefully the guy was like, hey, there's somebody here. Maybe he was calling for help. Police were still searching for Cabana as of Sunday morning. Now, Cabana deserves to die. There. That's what I think. The man wearing a black wool hat and surgical mask approaches 3 employees who are trapped in a small space and stabs one of them, a young woman who is able to run away seconds later, though not before she is stabbed again in the back. You should have some reasonable belief that when you're going to go to work, that you're not going to have to worry about getting stabbed by someone. The attacker then stabs the second employee as the man with the walkie-talkie hurls a notebook at him. That appears to distract the attacker long enough for the second victim to flee. The third employee can be seen getting up from the ground after the attacker runs away. Authorities said that Sunday that the 2 museum employees, a 24-year-old man and a 24-year-old woman, were both stable with non-life-threatening injuries. Their names weren't released. Look, I don't care. It's never okay for a dude to jump over a desk with a knife and start hacking at people. Like, that guy should burn, especially considering these two people were employees of an organization. According to police, Cabana was denied entrance Saturday for previous incidents of disorderly conduct. Previous incidents. John Miller, the NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism, said his membership had been revoked for 2 separate incidents of disorderly behavior at the museum in recent days. A letter informing him of his expired membership had been sent out Friday, but he came to the museum Saturday saying he intended to see a film there. He then became upset and stabbed the museum employees in the back, collarbone, and back of the neck. They were rushed within minutes to the hospital. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't have happened in the first place. Miller said Saturday that the video showed which way the suspect went after leaving the museum. Police shared photos of Cabana late Saturday night asking for the public's help finding him. The department has no record of a previous arrest for the man. The museum didn't immediately respond to an emailed request for comment on the incident, but it said on social media that it would be closed to the public on Sunday. The Midtown Manhattan Museum evacuated its patrons on Saturday afternoon. Yuichi Shimada, a museum goer present at the time of the attack, tweeted he was on the second floor when a couple suddenly came running toward him, and he heard security guards' radios throughout the museum loudly announcing something at the same time. It was chaotic partly because it was snowing, with a group of young women in a panic and crying. Not being good with claustrophobia myself, I headed for the exit early. Shimada was diverted to the side on his way out as a stretcher was hurriedly brought in. Police vehicles, ambulances, emergency lights flashing thronged outside the museum as dozens of patrons hurried away. Mayor Adams tweeted Saturday evening that he'd been briefed on the attack and that said the victims' injuries were not life-threatening. We're grateful for the quick work of our first responders. MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, was founded in 1929. It's one of New York City's top tourist attractions and drew more than 700,000 visitors in 2020. Its collection of modern art includes The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh and works by Henri Matisse and Paul Gauguin. I can't say it, but you know. So, look, I think that when you go to work, you should have some reasonable expectation of safety. In this case, it looks like there was a security guy. I don't know. Now, you're not going to be able to prevent all violent incidents from ever happening. I'm just saying, like, we should do what we can to ensure that when people are going to work, they don't have to worry about being murdered by random strangers. Also, like, it's just, I think that the laws should be set up, not even as a deterrent, as an absolute punishment. If you attack someone who's working on the job, if you try to stab them, life in prison. No possibility of parole. No second chance. You need to stop with the idea of attacking workers anywhere. It's just wrong. And I cannot stand it. Moving on. This will be the last article. Excuse. Internet-backed employee who received warning for helping mother. Now listen. Now let's be fair here. This is Reddit or something. And number one, we don't know if the story's true. Number two, it could be embellished. Number three, people are always willing to, if you're further than an arm's length from someone, you're always willing to give them the most aggressive advice because you do not suffer from the consequences if your decision is wrong. Only the person that has to make the decision is the one who really has the chance of things not working out well. Hundreds of internet commenters showed empathy for one employee who said they received a verbal warning for giving their mother a ride to a doctor's appointment, causing them to arrive late for work. Now, did the employee that received a verbal warning for giving their mother a ride to the doctor's appointment, did they say to anyone in advance, hey, tomorrow morning I'm supposed to be taking my mother to a doctor's appointment? Would you please, I know I'm supposed to be here, but I'll be a few minutes late. Are we good with that? That's what probably should have happened. In a viral Reddit post published on r or Anti-Work, Redditor, somebody or other, lamented over the fact that they were accosted for being late while their coworkers with children rarely receive the same treatment. Titled "Can't Use the Kids Excuse," the viral post has received 28,000 votes and more than 1,600 comments. I agree with what I saw. I saw a single woman once when I was working in wherever Eastern Michigan is. I want to say it's Ypsilanti. That's where it is. And she was in Ypsilanti, and she would tell me that, like, oftentimes a colleague would ask her to go babysit because she, quote unquote, didn't have kids or didn't have a family. Or they would do these kinds of things, and it was just bad. It's like, because this lady didn't have a family, she didn't have to. I mean, she obviously had plenty of time to work for everyone else. It was really bad. Writing that their coworkers are all older than them, the person explained the frustrating circumstances that led them to them receiving a verbal warning from their employer. My coworkers always run late because of their kids and leave early because of their kids and never get into trouble. But me, I run 30 minutes late because of my mom, who needs a last-second ride to the doctor, and I get a verbal warning. F you, they added emphatically. Just because I have no kids and husband does not mean I don't have family members as well. Yes, I agree. I mean, if we're gonna dole out punishment and then we're gonna change based on someone's circumstances, then all of a sudden we kind of get a large grievance organization. Like say my son doesn't have a leg, and then someone else's says, "Oh yeah, that's terrible. Well, mine doesn't have 2 arms." It gets really bad. So anyway, when COVID-19 first caused the United States to shut down in March 2020, many tech companies and companies in other industries used large profit margins to provide employees with greater employer benefits, including extra time off for employees with children. Despite rising child care costs, the temporary or permanent closure of schools and daycares, and the obvious need for parents to take on even more responsibility. Now, this was written before reporters are upset with the idea that parents are taking on responsibility for the education of children. Employees without children were immediately outraged. In an article, "Parents Got More Time Off, the Backlash Started." The New York Times explained numerous companies in which employees with children received more time off and added benefits than employees without children. Reporting that childless employees at Facebook and Twitter became disgruntled with the uneven paid time off allowances, the New York Times included a quote from a Facebook CEO officer, Sheryl Sandberg, reportedly issued during a video conference held in 2020. "I do believe parents have certain challenges," she told Facebook employees, "but everyone has challenges, and those challenges are very, very real. One of the challenges faced by childless employees throughout the pandemic is a greater workload to compensate for parents who have not had to use the extra time off to care for their children. In some cases, this shift in workload has caused severe turmoil and animosity between employees based on parental status. If the work that parents can't manage falls to the childless, who already have full workloads, of course there's going to be resentment and anger," journalist Jill Filipovich wrote in an opinion piece for CNN. That's not a lack of empathy or a sense of entitlement. It's a correct assessment of the fact that your workplace is exploiting you because of your parental status and pitting parents against non-parents instead of solving the problem at hand. Too much work and not enough people to do it. Today, 2 years since COVID-related cancellations marked the beginning of the pandemic in the United States, that sentiment remains strong amongst American workers. In a comment left on the viral Reddit post, which has received more than 3,000 votes, Redditor Illuminator said that employees without children are rarely upset that employees with children are awarded greater leniency and benefits. Instead, employees without children want a similar level of leniency for themselves to accommodate their personal lives in a similar manner. Let's be clear. The problem is not that people with children are afforded a bit of flexibility. The problem is that this flexibility is not extended to others. I think that's true. That's fair. I think people's frustration would be better directed if it's towards the employers who pick and choose what obligations are valid towards parents with legitimate obligations, another commenter said. Bam. Okay, so this is my favorite part of the show. What did we learn today? Well, we learned that Wells Fargo, there are allegations that it's a boys club. We learned that you should not wait a year in a crappy job. Let's just say you don't like it when you first get on board. Just get out. Just get out. 11 things to say at work to get you sued. They weren't like I thought they would be. I thought there would be a lot more 4-letter words and suggestions. 11 things. Starbucks and REI workers think unionization is the answer. Is it? That question doesn't get answered in the articles we read. It basically says like, hey, you know, I don't know. It's not where I'm at. And then we went to museum work can be dangerous, and why aren't these people being protected? Then finally, if you're driving your mom to the doctor and you get docked pay or something, and you're otherwise a good employee, always on time, etc., how is that okay? We don't think it is. All right, with that, I'm going to head out. I've got one more live stream this week. It'll be tomorrow night at 9. Please come, please watch, and please learn and listen and help me to understand things. With that, my eyes are about falling over, or falling down. My eyelids. I'm in a little bit of a food coma at this point in time. I'm just going to post everything and then go to bed. Thank you for watching. I will catch you tomorrow.